Notre Dame fans, welcome to a special edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. And it is special because we are down here in Arizona getting ready for tomorrow's Fiesta Bowl. So it is here. We're now literally 24 hours away from this game getting started. My name is Brian Driscoll. I'm the publisher at IrishBreakdown.com. I'll be joined here somewhat shortly by Sean Davis, who is a new recruiting analyst at Irish Breakdown. So we're gonna just dive right into things here and get going. First, there's a little bit of news out there. Number one, Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame's head coach, reported today that Cam Hart, the cornerback, who some people had wondered whether he would play, it was reported that he was in practice the other day had his knee wrapped because of, pardon me, he had his knee wrapped because he got bruised in practice, and there were some folks that were reporting he may not play. Coach Freeman announced today that that is not the case. He will play in tomorrow's game. It was just a knee bruise, which is a good thing because after about 48 hours, that usually goes away. So that's a good sign. So Cam Hart will be playing in the game. Also, a reminder, tomorrow at 12:15 Eastern. I'm trying to get like all the time, like when's it going to be announced where I'm at, where he's at, and then Eastern time. But tomorrow, reminder that at 12:15 Eastern, so about 45 minutes before the kickoff of the Notre Dame game against Oklahoma State, 2023 safety Peyton Bowen is going to announce his college decision. He is down to Notre Dame, USC, Alabama, and Oklahoma. So this is going to be a big one for Notre Dame. Got to get this one done. I'll just say this. I would much rather be Notre Dame going into this announcement than anybody else. So looking forward to seeing Peyton Bowen's decision tomorrow. We will not have a live show for that. Obviously, Vince is going to be in the press box. By that time, I'm going to be in the stands getting ready for the game. We are going to record a podcast tonight, just kind of talking about him as a player, breaking down his film, and we'll put that out after his decision. So that is that. And then we have some people asking about it. We are going to be meeting today at 1:30 local time, so Mountain Time. We will be meeting at Marley's in downtown. Don't know how many people are going to be there. I reserved about 15 spots. There's going to be room to get a little bit more if we need to, but that is what we're doing today. So after this podcast, I will quickly get ready and head out of here and head down there for anyone that's going to be able to make it. Also, Kirk Barton, a former Ohio State player and former teammate of Marcus Freeman and also of James Laurinaitis, announced today on Twitter that James Laurinaitis is going to be joining the Notre Dame coaching staff. It has not been made official by Notre Dame. I would imagine that's a pretty good source since it's someone that knows them pretty well. I would imagine that's something that James Laurinaitis was comfortable with him putting out there, I would assume, in that instance. And then the other piece is what I don't know now is in what role. I don't know if that's going to be as a linebackers coach, as an assistant strength person to get him on the field, but not as a coaching thing in an analyst role. I don't have an answer to that yet, but it does look pretty promising that James Laurinaitis is going to be joining the team, the Notre Dame coaching staff, in some capacity. So that is the news heading into the Fiesta Bowl. Oh, Marcus Freeman also did announce today that there are no COVID people out right now, that Notre Dame has done their testing, and as of today, everybody's good to go, everybody's in good shape, and they're ready to rock and roll. So barring something changing in the next 24 hours, it looks like Notre Dame is going to have a whole team ready to go, other than the people that we already know aren't going to be here. So that is the little bit of housekeeping that we had to do here before the show starts. All right, so we're going to get started here with a super chat from Kay Grant, and you just wanted to say, can't join today, but here's a little gift. Go Irish. Thank you, Mr. Grant. We appreciate you so much being a part of what we are doing. So ready to rock and roll today. Let's get this thing going, because IB Nation, as my man Tommy Guns says, is in the house. So here we go. So Corey D, obviously he's talking about the news. Steve Kick, about the James Laurinaitis thing. So I'll go ahead and share my thoughts on this now. I am fine. I don't really care what role he's in. like Marcus Freeman has to know. I don't think you put yourself in position to be the head football coach at the University of Notre Dame if you're not aware of how important a coaching staff is to your coaching career. I think the fact that Marcus Freeman played for Jim Tressel makes me feel even more confident that he understands the importance of having a strong coaching staff. I mean, Jim Tressel was a guy that always had good coaching staffs. I mean, that was just something that Jim Tressel did. He understood how important it was to have a good coaching staff. And I would imagine Marcus Freeman is going to be the same way. A strong coaching staff is incredibly important to putting a team, really just having a great football team. And so if Marcus Freeman is going to bring on James Laurinaitis in some capacity, then I have to think that he understands, knows exactly what he's getting himself into. I just, I just feel that that's something he's comfortable in. And regards to a position coach, a guy that's never coached football before, number one, and I'm just going to work with the assumption that he's a coach, because if it's in some non-position coach role, then it's not a problem. If he's an assistant strength coach, or if he's if he's in a situation where he is the back office guy, an analyst, things like that, then it's easy for him to grow into that role. With all that and being said, I feel like if you're Coach Freeman, you're in a situation where you kind of have a pretty good idea of what James Laurinaitis can bring to the table. You have a pretty good idea of his knowledge of the game. You have a pretty good idea of his ability to teach. Because as we've talked about before with a lot of these guys, number one, if you've been in the NFL a long time, and I believe James Laurinaitis was in the NFL for quite a long time. I'm actually looking up his career bio now. He was in the NFL from 2009 to 2016 before injuries kind of took that away. So he was in the NFL for a decent amount of time, which means he had some success, obviously, and he was a guy that became an NFL veteran. He's going to will have worked with younger players. That's the case. A lot of these coaches also, a lot of these players also do a lot of stuff in camps. Like they have their own camps, they work their teammates' camps. There's a lot of different things that they do where they're teaching and they're involved in the game in some capacity. So I guarantee you James Laurinaitis has had something to do in some capacity in a coaching standpoint that has sort of allowed him to evaluate whether or not he wants to teach, and allows Marcus Freeman to evaluate what he can or can't do. So those are things that I see as positives, that I have to feel like Marcus Freeman has some kind of idea of what James Laurinaitis can do. So kind of a long-winded answer on that, but it also goes back to what I've always said from day one. If you have the chops, you have the chops. And we're talking about a position coach here, right? This is a little different than a coordinator who's never coached before, or head coach. We're talking about a guy that's been a position coach, right? We're not talking about someone who is going to run a defense or run a head football, be a head football coach. We're talking about a guy that is going to be a position coach. He's also going to be a position coach. Again, just I don't know what role. I'm just saying this is the only position I think anyone would be concerned about him not having any coaching experience. The head coach is a friend of his who is considered an excellent linebackers coach. So he's going to have that person on staff too to help him with anything that is involved in the transition into coaching. And normally it's drills. It's maybe here's a way to instruct something. Here's a way to teach this technique. Hey, you've got to play with it, but how do you drill it? You've got a head coach that can help you put those drills together. How do we organize film sessions? How do we organize practice structure? How do we organize the academic side of things? All those things that a position coach has to do that is not something you necessarily get experience doing as a player are things that Marcus Freeman can help him do in that role. And as I said, if it's not a coaching role, then he'll be perfectly fine, because it'll be very easy for him to learn those things in a role without the pressure of being a position coach. It wouldn't shock me if he's a position coach. It also wouldn't shock me if it was in some sort of role like like an assistant strength position like that Jake Flint had, because what that allows him to do is be on the field and at times provide some instruction and be around in ways that an analyst is not supposed to be around. So I think that factors into it as well. So Steve, that's kind of my thoughts. And look, this is a name. This is a guy that's going to have some ties to the state of Ohio. This is a guy that was a heck of a college football player. Won the Lott Trophy, won the Butkus Award, won the Nagurski Trophy, 2-time Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, 3-time consensus All-American. was a tremendous, tremendous player from just from in the state of Ohio. So, as far as the connections he'll have there as far as a player. And he was obviously, I don't think he played high school ball in Ohio, but obviously he played at Ohio State. So that obviously would be the big thing. So I got no problem with it. I have no problem with it at all. I think there's a lot of positives to it. A lot of positives to it. Got a super chat from Jordan Schreiber. He said, "Hey, hey, ho, ho, Dell Alexander's got to go." Um, I understand. I feel your pain. I don't disagree with you at all, but I think you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that he may be back next year. So just is what it is. Richard Maltby, thank you for the super chat, Richard. Your nephew is on to something. Everyone is talking about Diggs. However, Tyree has been an underutilized piece of this offense all year. Number 25 has over 150 yards, total yards. Irish 24, Oklahoma State 21. And I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that for sure. So on number one on Tyree having a big role, but also on my nephew being onto something. He's pretty good about that. So yeah, I think he's a smart little kid. So I'm excited about this game, and this is the first college football game he's ever going to get to watch. So I'm very excited to be a part of that as well. So Steve Kick also says, and I'll make sure that Sean sees this later, but not a question. Just want to say, BD, you hit a grand slam adding Sean to the staff. I can't wait for him to start contributing. Me too. And Ryan Roberts has also already started contributing. If you go to irishbreakdown.com, Ryan has already gotten in touch with Peyton Bowen, and Peyton previewed the 4 teams that he's looking at for tomorrow. I'm actually going to put that article at the bottom of the chat so people can have that. So Ryan has already kind of getting to work, already making an impact, getting a hold of people and talking to kids and all that type of stuff. And so I'll put that article in the chat. So yeah, I appreciate that, Steve. I appreciate that very much. I'll pass along those sentiments to Sean. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see here. Corey D says, I've said this repeatedly, but I'll say it again. I'm so happy Kelly is gone. There is a new and fresh energy around the program. And I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and I think that's really an interesting thing. And I think that's a real thing, Corey, because I think everybody appreciated what Brian Kelly had done. Some people were just willing to accept whatever Brian Kelly did and said, or whatever mistakes he made, or silly comments he made, or inability to show up for a big game or anything like that. And just because there was this fear that they're going to go back to the way it was before he got here, which I don't accept that fear. I think when it comes to Marcus Freeman, though, once that decision was made, once the change was made, I think there was a lot of energy about what can come, and that maybe, I think people have kind of accepted, hey, this is our lot in life, so to speak. And then Marcus Freeman comes in, and I think there's a new energy of people saying, hey, maybe we don't have to do that. Maybe we can take the next step. Maybe we can recruit at an elite level. Maybe we can play with energy. Maybe we can show up for big games. And now Marcus Freeman has got to go show it. He's got to go prove it, right? And but there's a ton of energy, and we talked about this during the year. I mean, at our tailgates, I was surprised at just a lack of enthusiasm about this team. Not from people not being fans, but just from the standpoint of just kind of like the thought that something's going to happen. So, yeah, we'll have to see. Connor Patton says, thank you for not putting a leprechaun on IB gear. Being 5'3", I don't need that on my clothing. Yeah, Connor. Well, we did that all for you, man. We knew that you didn't want it on there. No, obviously, there's some trademark stuff involved that we wouldn't be allowed to do that. But yeah, we won't be having any leprechauns on anything. Dropping Dimes asked right there too. I'll get that out. What position is Peyton Bowen? Peyton Bowen is a 2023 safety. So he's really, really good football player. If you haven't had a chance to watch him play, definitely want to check him out. I really like him a lot. And yeah, he's going to do some really, really good things. So, yeah. All right. Let me get down to here some more questions here. Q Kibbs 97. With Kelly gone, will Reese use Buckner more or less? Obviously, very game dependent, but pre-kickoff thoughts. I think Brian Kelly pretty much had checked out midway through the year. I really do. I think that Brian Kelly was still making decisions, but I think we saw Tommy Reese kind of get to do what Tommy Reese wanted to do down the stretch. And I think what we saw from Tyler Buckner down the stretch is kind of what Tommy Reese wants to do with him down the stretch. I think that's kind of where they are. That's who they want to be. That's the kind of offense they want to run, and that's that's who they are. So I don't think that I don't think that there's any situation where he wasn't using Tyler Buckner down the stretch in a way because of Brian Kelly, or that he was using Tyler Buckner because of Brian Kelly. I think he was using Tyler Buckner how he wanted, which means there will be a package for Tyler Buckner. He will have an opportunity to get in the game. I would expect him to play in some capacity. The question will be whether or not they're in a situation where is he going to play a lot? Is he just going to kind of come in as a change of pace? And I think part of that is going to be determined, Q, by how the game goes. I mean, I think, look, my understanding is there were a lot of games they went into down the stretch where they were planning on playing Tyler Buckner more, but Jack Cohn and the offense were just moving so well that you couldn't really, you just kind of had to keep going with it. And I think that's a very important thing. I think that when you're in a situation where your offense is just cruising along, I think a smart coach is going to say, hey, look, I don't want to make this change right now, right in the middle of the game, because our offense is really moving. And I think that's a smart decision. And so I think that was really part of the reason why we didn't see a lot of Tyler Buckner times down the stretch, is just because the offense was moving so well. So if we get into the game tomorrow and Tyler Buckner, or the offense isn't moving and it's kind of bogged down and the defense for Oklahoma State's playing really well, then we will certainly see, a situation where he's gonna play more. If the offense is humming and Jack Cohn is just moving the ball, then we may not see as much of Tyler Buckner. I hope we see Tyler Buckner in the red zone no matter what. I'd love to see a red zone package with Tyler Buckner, as I've talked about before. Tavis McKay asked, do you think this game could go a long way in making Elson the D coordinator? I think the game will have a role if Marcus Freeman is looking at potentially the game impacting whether or not he's going to keep Mike Elson as the defensive coordinator. I think the other thing that would factor in is not just the game, but it's just as important as the game, if not more important than the game and calling plays, is what did you do in preparation to the game? I've felt this for a long way, and I think I've voiced this before on this channel, that play calling is not the number one priority of a great coordinator. If you're a great play caller, but you don't do other things really well, it won't matter how good of a play caller you are. How do you put practice together? How do you game plan? Are you able to find, weaknesses in the opponents? Are you allowed to build around your own strengths? Can you take what you know and what you want to accomplish, build it into a practice plan that begins on Tuesday, runs through Friday, and it's done in a way that you're teaching in a way, you and the assistant coaches, and they understand what you want to do, and they're able to implement what you want to do, and you put a practice plan together, and you go out every single day, and you put that plan together, and you carry it out in practice, and your team on Saturday is ready to go. You could be just a solid play caller, but if you're elite Monday to Friday, basically, then your defense is going to be really, really good. If you're an elite play caller, but you're not great on Monday to Friday, you're going to have some success because you're a great play caller, but your teams aren't going to be as good as the other side of the ball. And so I believe, and Marcus Freeman knows this, if it's not just about the game, if Mike Elson is under evaluation to be the next defensive coordinator, he's been under evaluation for Marcus Freeman from day one. And if Coach Freeman doesn't like what he saw from him in the first, for those 15 practices, then it doesn't matter what he does on Saturday. And the opposite is true. If it's just, it's a well-called game, they do a good job on defense, but he loves what he did in the first 15 practices, that's going to go a long way. If he does both, then Mike Elson could make a very, very strong case that this job needs to be his, and that obviously would be a decision that Coach Freeman makes. There's some quality candidates that I've heard about, but I think Mike Elson is also a quality candidate. And at the end of the day, I think all of this prep into the Fiesta Bowl is gonna play a role. No question about it. I sell for 2K. Just joined the message board. Very excited. Welcome aboard. I appreciate that very, very much. John Christophik says, "Hi everyone. I can't wait to watch the Fiesta Bowl." I'm with you on that. I think it'll be. I think that's going to be a. I think it's going. I hope it's a fun game. I was talking to my dad last night. I told him, I said, I don't really know what to expect from this game. I have no idea what to expect from this game. I mean, it's just because so much of this is new, and we really don't know what Marcus Freeman is capable of, and we really don't know kind of what this thing is going to look like, and we really don't know how the team is going to play under him. I mean, we all think and we all hope, and we're all looking forward to seeing it, but at the end of the day, we really don't know. And that's the thing that leaves a little bit of anxiety, I guess, in this. Like, I'm confident that it's going to be a good thing, but until we actually see it, there's always going to be a little, you know, a little bit of anxiety about it. Tommy Gunn says he had mentioned earlier about bringing AJ Hawk on. I think he was joking. And he said, and since everyone except Brian and Vince wants a dedicated QB coach, could you imagine Troy Smith tutoring TB12? I really don't want Notre Dame to become Ohio State West. I really don't. I'm no problem the fact that Marcus Freeman went there. If he wants to bring in James Laurinaitis, if he wants to bring in Brian Hartline, but I don't want this to be a thing where, this is a coaching staff of Marcus Freeman and all his former teammates. I really don't care to see it get to that point, to be completely honest with you. A lot of talk about James Laurinaitis, Cam Hart being ready to go. Tommy Guns. Okay, I see the theme you're going with here, Tommy. So we're going to go ahead and move on to other things, but this isn't going to happen. Okay, he's a head coach somewhere, but anyway, we're not going to bring in a staff of all Ohio State players. Mike Sullivan says, will we see a lot of assistant coaches announce job transfers after tomorrow's bowl games? Yeah, I think the next 2 weeks is going to be filled with a lot of that. I think there's a lot of coaches that have I think the early signing period and the manner in which it has been handled has created some negatives and some positives in how it reflects coaches. Number one, the negatives are you have teams that are more willing to fire coaches much earlier than normal, meaning during the season, because they feel they need to get a coach in place and have everything figured out by the time of the early signing period. When it comes to assistant coaches, a lot of the assistant coaches are able to kind of get through signing day, kind of get through the bowl games, do some interviews during some of the downtime, and then wait till after the bowl game to kind of start seeing that movement. And a lot of coaches are staying with their team, and assistant coaches are staying with their team and, coaching out the streak, which I respect and appreciate. I know there's at least one Notre Dame coach that was told, we talked about this, Jeff Quinn, I was told was told very before the practices started that he was not going to be back next year. And Jeff Quinn could have easily just walked away and said, forget this. Screw you guys. But he stayed. He coached the kids up. I've been told he coached his tail off, just worked hard and did what he normally does. And you got to respect a guy like that, and then there's a lot of coaches that would be very easy for them to just bail and leave and do all those type of things and take a new job. And like Brian Kelly, taking Brian Polian, that's fine. I mean, some coaches want to leave. And some coaches, it's a good thing. But I think in this instance, you saw a lot of coaches that stayed and saw it through. And I also think I like the fact that Marcus Freeman didn't rush into any panic assistant coaching hires. Number one, feel okay, I got to get this job filled. He has a support staff he trusts. You have guys like Nick Lazinski stepping into the equation and filling a void, filling a role. You've got other people kind of stepping in, filling those voids, filling those roles, and that's been a really good thing to see from Notre Dame players, to see from Notre Dame coaches, that people kind of stayed on board. So you don't have to rush into those hires and make a panic hire before signing day. Say, hey, look, it's important to get this right. I'd rather miss a recruit in 2022 because we made the right hire from a coaching standpoint than get a recruit and then make the wrong hire. And I think that patience has been good. And I like the strategy so far. Now we just got to find out what the end result's going to be. I think that's the thing that's going to tell us whether or not the process worked, is whether or not he makes good hires. And it's not a situation where there's like one guy that you have to hire, like offensive line. Obviously, I advocated for bringing back Harry Heastand, but there's other good coaches out there. Had he gone a different direction, I would have been okay with that. People have asked me about the D coordinator position. Who do you want? A really good coach who can recruit and teach. I mean, it doesn't have to be this guy. Like, I think Mike Elson could do a very good job. I think he's ready for it. I think John Heacock could come here and do. Give me 1 second. Apologies. Little mic issue here. As I'm kind of chatting here, if some of you could let me know that how my sound is, because we just had a mic issue flare up here real quick. So just want to make sure that everything sounds good. But yeah, I want to see that he makes good hires, and I don't think there's just one good hire at every position. I think there's several coaches that could do a good job. He just has to make sure that he hires the right job. Andrew Burke with a super chat. Thank you, Andrew. Happy New Year's, fellas. Lot of transfer portal talk this time of year. Question: who do you think is the best transfer Notre Dame has taken in the last 20 years, and what Notre Dame transfer out has had the best impact career on another team? Okay. I mean, it's hard for me not to go with the Alohi Gilman for the guy, and Tommy Guns just said the same thing. It's hard for me not to go with the Alohi Gilman on the transfer. I'm trying to think of who else was there. I mean, Jack Cohn had a big impact this season, but it really didn't kind of get rolling until midway through the season. I mean, Alohi Gilman was a 2-year starter. He was a captain. He was, a leader, an emotional leader on a couple really, really good football teams. So, there's been some good transfers, not a ton. I mean, Cody Riggs did a nice job in his 1 year here. Jack Cohn's done a nice job. Ben Skronik did a solid job last year. He wasn't 100% all year, but I'm just trying to think of who else was even a transfer. I mean, Notre Dame hasn't had a ton of transfers. Yeah, I'd have to go with Alohi. I mean, it's hard for me to go. Two-time captain, drafted NFL draft pick, was a key player in a playoff first ever playoff team. It'd be hard for me to go against him. And the other part of the question is, who has had the best impact career on another team? I haven't paid attention to a lot of those guys, to be honest with you, at least especially in recent years. I mean, Phil Dracovic has done a pretty good job, and I think he's going to have a chance to continue to do well. Be curious to see, his season was off to a pretty good start until he got hurt. Trying to think of some other guys that have transferred and done a nice job, and I can't really think of a lot, to be honest with you. I know Jen Markeith had a nice year at UCLA this year. Jonathan Jones had a really nice couple-year stretch at Toledo. I believe he was Toledo's leading tackler this year. I thought I read that the other day. Let me look at those numbers real quick. But, he's done a nice job. Yeah, Jonathan Jones led Toledo in tackles with 97 this year. He had a nice year for them. He had 97 this year and had 9.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 3 pass breakups, 2 fumbles forced. So he had a really nice year for Toledo this year. So I was happy to see that. But I'd have to kind of look and see what else is going on. So I'd have to really kind of think about who else has left and performed well. So let me get back up here to the questions. The nice thing is that because StreamYard has finally fixed how this works, is when I got kicked out of the chat, it doesn't I don't lose all those questions. Could you imagine that? That would be absolutely terrible. I lost a few of them, but not all of them. So I'll still have some. Actually, it looks like I lost a little bit more than I thought I did. Here's a super chat from TFN Clan. It says, do you think Notre Dame should go after the Northwestern safety transfer? He is talking about Brandon Joseph, who announced, I believe, yesterday that he is leaving Northwestern and he is going to pursue grad transfer options. So I'm going to be completely honest about a couple things here. So I don't know a lot about Brandon Joseph. Like I've seen him play at times, but I've never like locked in and just been keyed into what he does and how he plays and things along those lines. So I really couldn't give you a ton of information on that. Now I'll say this: there's a couple people that I know that have watched him and studied him more that said he's a really good player and Notre Dame should look at him, including Ryan Roberts, our new recruiting hire. Obviously, he does a lot of stuff for the NFL draft. And he has seen him play, obviously looking at him as a draft prospect. My question would be, my I guess more so my concerns would be, is he's a 4-year player. And I believe, let me look and see where he is. Is he a junior? I'm just got to see kind of where he was. He was a 2019 player, so he is a true junior, and he graduated from Northwestern. Okay, so my question would be: did his draft stock take a hit because of what happened at Northwestern this year, and he doesn't feel he's going to be a top pick, and he's going to then go and find somewhere to get his draft stock back? That's fine. If he didn't play well this year, I'd be a little bit more nervous about that. But I have, as someone who hasn't seen him play a lot, so again, I'm not offering an opinion on Brandon Joseph. I'm going to watch the film and take a peek at it after the bowl game and have a pretty good idea together, on that. But here's what I'll say, sort of from a big picture standpoint. If you think Brandon Joseph can come to your school, if you're Notre Dame, and you think Brandon Joseph can come and be an impact player, can be this guy's going to start. He could be, in a Alohi Gilman type, right? Like a starter for a year, be a difference maker, be just like, I think he was an All-American in 2020, which it's hard for me to really get too fired up about because they played so few games. But if you kind of look at it and say, okay, what can he do for us? And it's impact player, starter, no-brainer, best safety on the roster the day he shows up, can really be a key piece to us, then you look at him and you bring him in. And that's true at any position. I mean, look, I don't want a quarterback transfer. I don't. I'm ready to roll with Tyler Buckner, and I'm ready to roll with Drew Pine. But if Caleb Williams or Carson Strong calls up and says, hey, I want to transfer back to Notre Dame, or if Phil Dracovic did that, I want to transfer to, not back to, but I want to transfer to Notre Dame, and Caleb Williams wants to play his next 2 years here, would I strongly consider that? Of course I would. I'd be foolish not to if I'm Notre Dame. Same thing with those other players, because they're elite players that right now are more proven that can take you to that level. Same thing at any position. If a guy is a legitimate, wow, that guy is a difference maker, then you have to look at him. If he's not that, then you have to be real careful about bringing in grad transfers. And there's two reasons why I say that, okay? The first one is you have to be – you say the response is, well, hey, look, it's always good to have competition, and that is true. But you have to be – it's not as simple as just saying bring in a player and it's competition. Because I look at it like this. You have two young players, Ramon Henderson and Xavier Watts, who I think have very, very – high futures, big futures. They have a chance to go do something down the road. Okay. Then when I look at it, you have to be careful that if you're not bringing in a guy that you definitely think could be a difference maker and it's just for competition, then you have to understand that's going to take reps away from two young players who need as many reps as possible to go out there and develop next year. That's number one. Number two, if that guy is not a difference maker, you have to be legitimately concerned about what is that going to do to the culture of our team when we're just going out there and bringing in free agents all the time. How do eventually you're going to lose the trust of the players. Now, if you do it right, and I've been meaning to write this. I'm going to wait till after the season because I just, for some reasons, but Notre Dame can't be a huge transfer program. It's going to be difficult to do that. And I don't think they are always going to be a team that needs to focus first on developing their own players. You start bringing in transfers at key positions every year. Number one, you create a cycle that you almost have to repeat because you lose development. And number two, you lose the trust of your players. And now when you're trying to convince them to stay at other positions, maybe, well, I don't know if you're going to go get a transfer. And, if I stay, if you're going to go get a transfer and he's going to come out and, beat me out if I stay, what's to guarantee that? you've got to be real careful, because if you bring a guy in that is in a situation where he is not a difference maker, you start losing your team a little bit. If you bring in the right players and they have an Alohi Gilman type of impact, if they have a Jack Cohn type of impact as transfers, then your players are going to trust you more when you do bring a player in from the outside. And so I'm glad Sean showed up, because he may have a better answer for this specifically, but that's my big picture view. Is Notre Dame's going to have to be really careful with Brandon Joseph and other transfers to make sure that if you are bringing a guy in, that and it's a guy that's going to start, he needs to be a difference maker, because difference makers will be accepted. Guys that are just more like Kane Madden's situation is not going to be as well received by players as Jack Cohn's or Alohi Gilman's or players like that. Sean, the question was about Brandon Joseph, the kid from Northwestern. I said I haven't seen him enough to have an opinion on go get the guy other than reputation, and I don't make proclamations about that based on reputation. I only go by what I see on film, right? Because Kane Madden was an All-American last year too. So Brandon Joseph being one in 2020 doesn't mean a whole lot to me, because I didn't see him play. Have you seen him play at all at Northwestern? I mean, you're a Chicago guy. Have you had a chance to see him play a whole lot?
Very fundamental kid. Very well coached. Very well coached. Is always going to be in position, made plays. And if you remember last year, the Northwestern secondary, that pretty much led that entire defense, led them to the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
They were very good. And, it's shocking that there was a lot of good secondaries, especially in the Big Ten West this year. Iowa had a really good secondary. They're going to get better with Xavier Iwamka. And the Northwestern secondary over the last 3 years has produced, if I'm not mistaken, 4 NFL DBs over the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, Greg Newsome's having a heck of a year, supposedly, for Cleveland.
For Cleveland. So, look, it comes down to what you want the narrative to be in recruiting moving forward, right? Because you see kids coming in. Number one, kids are going to want to play. And if your mantra is we compete, we go one-on-ones, and you'll get the opportunity to be identified to get on the field, then, hey, that's going to be the mindset. If I'm going to get somebody, I think you said it, that guy has to be a difference maker. I haven't sat down and watched hours of film on him to determine whether or not he's a difference maker or whether or not he's just a really good player on a bad team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's as good as Newsome was. Newsome was just a standout.
Well, if he was as good as Newsome, he wouldn't be transferring. He'd be going to the NFL.
Like Newsome, when you see a lockdown corner, I don't care what school they go to. Cincinnati's proof of that. Like they developed 2 lockdown corners, and moving forward, I would rather go with the young players that they already have at safety. And then look, like, why are you bringing them in? Like, why? I mean, that decision won't be made until after the bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Xavier Watts and you look at Ramon Henderson and you watch them play. And you say to yourself, hey, then they've already shown this year, I'm talking about the coaching staff, Brian, that they can identify talent, teach them up, and put them in certain positions. They just moved Jordan Botello, the Rover. That might not be his permanent position, but they identified something in the practices, said, let's move him here so he can get on the field more instead of just being the third, guy on the edge. And I think they're going to do the similar things. Ryan Barnes gets up to number 2 in the cornerback position. You still have Phillip Riley. Does Phillip Riley stay at cornerback? Does he move to safety? I mean, there's so much talent coming in, and then you're stacking Adon Schuler. In the safety class you have coming.
Although he would, by the time he shows up, Brandon Joseph is probably gone.
Yeah, but my point is like, why are you bringing Brandon Joseph in? Is he that much better than what you?
And that's kind of what I discussed before you joined, Sean. He needs to bring him in my opinion. Now, I'll say this: if you think he walks in the room if you think he walks on campus, the day he walks on campus, he is definitely your best safety, then you have to look at it. But see, who I think that impacts more than Ramon and Xavier, because honestly, Notre Dame's going to play 3 safeties next year, a lot.
True.
So there's a role for Houston, for Joseph, Ramon, and Xavier, especially with Xavier's ability to kind of play some nickel. Ramon could, do some different things, because Xavier, I think, is more – I actually would rather see Xavier in the slot having to flip his hips and cover than Ramon.
Yeah.
And I think was part of Ramon's problem. The point being, you're going to play 3 safeties. I think where this could have an even bigger impact is if you see him being at one safety spot, and then you see kind of Ramon and Xavier at the other safety spot, rotating all 3 of them in, then do it. Who would that impact most? Not the 2 young guys. As I'm thinking through it, it'd be more Houston Griffith and DJ Brown. I think that would be where you could see that impact, where you'd say, hey, if that's the case, you love your 2 young guys. You think Brandon Joseph can come in and be a difference maker in a low heat week? Because one of the questions was, who was the best transfer Notre Dame has had in the last 20 years? And I said, it's hard for me to go with anybody other than Alohi Gilman. And Alohi was an impact difference maker, in my opinion. Now, Brandon Joseph, if he's that can be that kind of player, then sure, I'm going to get him. But then you got to figure out, okay, who is this impacting the most, Ramon and Xavier or DJ and Houston? And I think the way that they like to rotate, I think this would impact Houston and DJ more. I think it guarantees one of them won't be back. I don't think, I just – because you also have Justin Walters. I think KJ Wallace, guys like that.
You're right.
I think that's who it would impact more. Because I would also do this, Sean. Let me just say this one thing. If I decide to do this, I'm sitting Ramon and Xavier down, maybe together, and saying, hey, just so you know, this is why we're doing this move. This has nothing to do with you guys. We think you both have bright futures. We're going to play at least 3 safeties per game.
Right.
You're going to have to compete. You're going to have to battle. You're going to still get your reps, because we're going to do it this way. Because my big concern when you do this is young guys like that need the reps. Absolutely. And then Brandon Joseph would need the reps to get used to this defense.
Yeah.
So I would consider it if you think he walks in the room and he is your best player the minute he steps foot on campus. It has to be that.
It has to be that. And I don't know if that's the case. And the reason I say that is because I've seen some comments in the chat. Look, you have to have a lot more respect for the talent at Notre Dame. All right. Just to say that he walks in the room and he's the best safety that Notre Dame has on the roster. Once again, have a little respect for the talent that's at Notre Dame. That's all I would say. And this is something that I'm learning more and more. Regardless of coaching hires or player movement, position changes, trust Marcus Freeman. Trust Marcus Freeman. And if Marcus Freeman makes the move, then I trust him. Okay, this guy must be that good. And if Marcus Freeman decides to stay away, then Marcus Freeman sees what he sees on that back end and says, look, we're ready to rock and roll. I mean, at this point, that's the way you have to look at it.
Right.
I agree with you. Do you make a call and do you check it out? Absolutely. Absolutely. But moving forward, I'm going to go ahead and just yield to, can Marcus Freeman and this staff make mistakes as far as coaching hires and things of that nature? Sure. But, you're going to have to let that play out. And I think he's not, look, I'm up here in Chicago, right? We heard about everybody in this city was pulling for Greg Newsome to go to the Chicago Bears. Everybody. We knew the lack of defensive backs and the depth. Everybody, we knew who Greg Newsome was for 2 seasons. There wasn't the same buzz about this kid. It just wasn't. So I wouldn't put him on the level of Greg Newsome. As I said before.
Right, because again, we're not having a conversation about him coming to Notre Dame if he's on that level. I mean, that's –
no, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. And then on top of that, I'll say this again. Would you take the safeties at Iowa over what you have at Notre Dame? Because they had
again, I'd have to see that. I'd have to break down their film. I guess for me, Sean, that's kind of my thing. It's just a general feeling of if it's got to be a guy that is a difference maker. Receivers a little different because you just need guys to fill out your flipping depth chart.
Yeah.
At most positions, I'm open to a transfer if we have a numbers need. When you look at meaning you're looking at it from a Notre Dame standpoint.
Yeah.
And B, if it's a guy that's a difference maker. And I don't know enough about Brandon Joseph to say he is or isn't. What I will say is I don't know if I would where I trust the coaches is when they talk to a kid and they say this kid's not a fit for what we're trying to do. So if they pass on him, then I trust them on that. What I just, you know me, what I'll never do is just, well, hey, I'm just gonna have to trust the coaches. If I watch the film, it's like Kane Madden, because otherwise I would have just had to say, hey, we need to trust the coaches when they brought in Kane Madden, right?
Right.
It's to me is I got to watch the film and I got to see it, and then I'll evaluate it based on that. So, to me, if Brandon Joseph is a legitimate all Big Ten caliber player, then I'd probably look to bring him in. If he's not, if he's just kind of a smart, heady player that's in the right position, then I don't know if that's the kind of difference maker that's going to go help us beat Alabama. You know what I mean? Like, that's my thing. And so, again, I don't know specifically what he can do. I got to watch the film, and I will. I mean, if there's legitimate interest from Notre Dame to bring this kid in, and early on it sounds like there's at least interest to go look at him, like you said, Sean, to make the call, to see the trend. I mean, he's graduating from Northwestern in 3 years. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the transcript's going to look pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, that part's going to be fine, but, watch the film. Because here's the thing too, Sean. I don't know if just being great in that defense means that you're going to be great in this defense. It's a different defense. It's a different coverage structure. Safeties are asked to do different things. So there's all those things to it. So if they say, hey, not for us, that's when I trust the coaches. And I was the same thing of the previous staff.
And that is something Northwestern plays a lot of too high. They play a lot of too high.
And that's not really who Notre Dame is, right?
They've had, in the last 3 or 4 years, they've had really good cornerbacks. They've had really good cornerbacks that could cover. So it was basically cover two, and they had rangy linebackers as well. Because I was about to call him Patty. Yeah,
it's Patty. Patty Fisher, yeah.
Patty Fisher was there. Yeah. He started as a freshman, I believe. And he'd been there. And
when Notre Dame played them in 2018, they had some really good linebackers.
Yeah. So that has been two man, or cover two. That's pretty much the type of safety he's been in the system he's played in. So,
and that's not really who Notre Dame is. I mean, they'll play a lot of two high pre-snap, but then they're going to roll to a lot of single high. You need to play center field. Pardon me. You need to play center field. You got to be able to play the outs. You got to play man. And again, I don't know if Brandon does or doesn't fit that. I promise I will watch the film if I find out Notre Dame has legitimate interest. I will watch the film. I'll evaluate them, and I'll give you all my thoughts. But that's just my overall view is I trust the coaches when they decide this guy's not a fit, because that's when you start to find out more things about scheme fit, personality fit, what the kid is looking for. I mean, if a kid, I'm not going to even use Brandon Joseph's name in this example because I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying this about him. I don't know. If a kid's like, hey, you got to promise me a starting job. Well, unless his name is Caleb Williams or, if Garrett Wilson was like, hey, I'm not going to go in the NFL. I want to transfer to Notre Dame, but you got to promise me a starting job. I'd say, oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like, there's exceptions to every rule.
Yeah.
But those kids usually don't transfer. They usually go pro more often than not. But like if Jahmyr Gibbs wanted to transfer to Notre Dame and said, I need a starting job, I'd say, nope, you got to battle. You got to compete, because I don't know if it's a given that you're better than the guys we have. And that would be a thing. Like, so those are things that they would learn in those conversations with the kid or his representatives or his family or whatever.
Yeah.
That if they say, hey, this isn't for us, I'm going to give them a little benefit of the doubt.
So
if they decide they want to go get him, that's when I will be more, okay, here's my opinion. I agree, or I disagree, or I agree, but here's the risks. Here's what you need to do. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for. So as long as it's not a situation where they're making this move, then means that you have to kind of, you're giving up on Ramon and Xavier. That's where I would have a problem. But I don't think it has to be, as I really think through and process this answer, I don't think it would really impact them a ton. if anything, it gives them another year as a buffer where they're more of a tandem, than they are as you have to take over now.
Right.
And I think that could benefit two guys who really are still very new to the position.
And this is something that Malik pointed out to me that he says, you know what, we have to be very honest.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Freeman is looking at this bowl game, but don't get it twisted. He's looking at the first game.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to go into that stadium. He knows that stadium. He knows that environment. And he wants to go into that stadium with as much veteran presence.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to go in dependent upon youngsters.
Unless it's impact youngsters.
Right. So he wants to go in, and if he can get some veterans that are impact to settle things down going into that Ohio State game, he's going to grab that in the transfer portal.
If they're difference makers.
If they're difference makers, absolutely. Right. So I just text someone that will give me a straight up answer about the kid, and if they text back before we get that. Now, I don't know if you've heard this. I was engineering the bowl games on Wednesday night, and as I was getting ready to leave, the podcast for Todd McShay and Mel Kiper came on.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking about the quarterbacks, and they were talking about how this quarterback class is just not anywhere near.
It's not good.
It's not good. And they said Kenny Pickett might be the only one that gets taken in the middle of the first round.
Yeah.
And that's the peak for him. And they started to discuss Sam Howell.
Mm-hmm.
And Mel Kiper said, so he's saying this. We're not saying this. Mel Kiper said, we're hearing rumblings that more than likely Sam Howell is going to go back.
Yeah, which I think he needs to do.
He's going to go back, and he might be looking to transfer. And when I heard that, my question to Malik offline was, if Sam Howell enters this transfer portal, do you check in?
You have to. You have to. I mean, I don't know if I would make the decision. Yeah, I mean, so for me to say that, I don't know. You have to. You have to at least look at it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to at least, and you need at least. I mean, if you had the conversation with Keaton Slovis, you freaking definitely have the conversation with Sam Howell.
Yeah,
because like here's Sam Howell, and here's Keaton Slovis.
Yeah,
right. Like actually, I'm gonna go lower. I'm off the screen. Okay,
like right here.
And I'll tell you something else. Sam Howell, the potential that he's going to come back is there because he played in the bowl game.
Yeah,
I mean, I tell you, I gained a ton of respect for him and Matt Corral with their answers for why they're playing in the bowl games. And they both said, look, if I'm going to go pro, it's better for me and my future to not play. But I have an obligation to this football team as a starting quarterback to see it through and to finish what we started. And I'm like, thank you. I'm a fan now of both of you guys, but you have to do it. Now, am I definitely going to make that move? I don't know, because it's a different offense, and and again, I think Tyler Buckner can be a star, and I don't know if doing Sam Howell for a year, what that does for your recruiting at the position. Hey, you can come in and be a top player, but if they get a chance to go get this is not as easy as great player, go get them. There's a lot of dynamics that go into this. And, but if you think you've got a chance to win a national championship next year and Sam Howell is like, I want to go Notre Dame, it's going to be hard for you to say no.
And let me be very clear. Like I said, I haven't run through hours of tape, but I've seen plenty of Big Ten games and seen plenty of Northwestern games. And before I worked at ESPN, I worked at Northwestern. I worked at WGN Radio, the home of Northwestern football. So I hear all the buzz from those guys over there about who's good on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Joseph is not in Kyle Hamilton's cap. Brandon Joseph is not being taken in the top 10 of the NFL draft.
But I don't think that is necessarily standard for do you bring him to Notre Dame or not.
No, I just want to make sure people understand,
because if that was true, he'd be leaving. He was in the same recruiting class as Kyle Hamilton.
Absolutely.
Right.
So why is he not leaving? If he's that good, why is he not going into the draft instead of transferring?
That good relative to the current Notre Dame players is more of the conversation for me.
So
That would be what I'd be saying.
Now he views himself as a 3rd or 4th round pick currently.
Mm-hmm.
And he feels he can improve that
Right.
if he plays somewhere else where he can get more eyes on him.
And it may be a thing where maybe he feels he's not in a defense that fits what he can do. He may think he fits a defense like Notre Dame or something else too. I mean,
right.
So that's why I say you have to do your due diligence. And if I pop in the film and I don't like what I see, if he comes to Notre Dame, I'll tell everybody. I'm not going to trust Coach Freeman in that regards. That's not your job's different than mine, right? I mean, you can do that. We have different responsibilities.
Yeah.
But for me, if they pass on him, I think that would tell me a lot about what they think about the current roster, mainly the young guys, and B, it tells me that they just didn't view him as a scheme fit. I don't think there's any doubt that he's a fit in the other areas that involve Notre Dame. The kid fit at Northwestern, and he's graduating in 3 years. He's going to be a fit at Notre Dame in that regards. It's more of he doesn't fit from a football standpoint. They may say, hey, look, he's a cover 2 safety. We don't need a cover 2 safety. We don't think he can play the alley. We don't think he can play man coverage. Those type of then okay, we're not gonna bring him in. So in that regards, I would show a little bit more trust. I want to address something too, Sean, because this was asked on our message board. I'm sure some other people have this.
Sure.
Because we announced yesterday that you're going to be coming on full, as an employee at Irish Breakdown.
Yeah.
I want to make sure people understand. Sean and I never had a conversation about where we discussed the possibility of him not doing Lucky Left podcast anymore. That wasn't in the conversation. So it wasn't negotiated that he would still do it. It was just assumed by both parties that he would still continue to do that. So I know some people ask me, like, is he going to still do the Lucky Lefty podcast? Sean, the answer is yes.
Every morning at 9 o'clock. Yes.
Yes. Because we look at each other as partners in that. Like, I'm a believer that, like, we do a 2-hour show every day. There's still a lot of hours in the day that people want to be filled with Notre Dame content.
Mm-hmm.
We look at each other as we help each other out. We partner with each other. It's not competition per se. It's like, if you like our show, you're going to like Lucky Lefty podcast show. And if you like Lucky Lefty, then you're going to like our show. And you're going to listen to both. And so that's why just in case anyone is wondering.
And we give you such a diverse choice.
It's a different show.
Content.
Yeah.
We give you so much content in different ways with both shows. And like you said, you guys, Irish Breakdown, they are our big brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They are our big brothers, and we model a lot of what we do after Irish Breakdown. So think about this. At 9 o'clock, you get Lucky Lefty, and then you get a break to get something to eat, and then Irish Breakdown is coming right behind.
Yes, absolutely.
What else do you want from us? We can't.
Absolutely.
What else do you want?
Yeah. So I just wanted to, because there were some people that I think were a little nervous that was not going to be a thing anymore. And I just wanted to make sure that people knew that was. Yeah, absolutely. Just Your Ordinary Joe with the Super Chat. Thank you, Joe. New avatar to honor an incredible year and excitement about the future. Let the matching IB sweats era begin. So Joe has some Notre Dame sweats and a Notre Dame shirt on in that avatar, which I absolutely love.
Yeah,
absolutely love. Joe is always rocking that IB gear. I absolutely love it. Joe is the man. Bayside Tiger 6. First of all, I love this avatar. Anyone my age or slightly younger than mine gets this Bayside Tiger thing. Happy New Year, IB Nation and your families. I'm certain of one game day improvement from Freeman, and that's his halftime speeches. Kelly's were awkward and uninspiring. Amen. I have to think. I mean, Marcus Freeman may not be able to coach his way out of a wet paper bag. None of us have any clue what kind of head coach he's going to be. We think he's going to be a good head coach. That's why we advocated for him to be the next head coach. But at the end of the day, we don't know. We're going to find out. One thing I'm willing to guarantee you right now is that his pregame and halftime speeches will absolutely be better than Brian Kelly's cringy, like made for TV, like I don't even want to go play anymore type of halftime speeches. Oh, they were so bad.
Yeah,
they were bad. Nate Gibson with Super Chat. Thank you very, very much for that, Nate. Got one from Kevin Woolard as well. Happy New Year, IB Nation. Here's to ending 2021 with a great win and a new beginning to 2022. Let the Marcus Freeman era begin. Go Irish.
Hey, Brian.
Yes, sir.
I just want to end this conversation about Brandon Joseph with this because look, he's not Kyle Hamilton. It has nothing to do with him going to Northwestern. If that was the case, then why did Northwestern have 2 first-round picks last year?
Mm-hmm.
a left tackle, and a cornerback. Stop. Stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Stop it. If he was that good, he would be in the draft. Plain and simple.
What was said?
It was just said the only reason he's not in the top 10 or is because Kyle Hamilton played at Notre Dame and he played at Northwestern on a 500 team. It's like that. NFL scouts don't care about that.
No, he could play at Northwestern State in Louisiana,
They don't
and if
care.
if
he's good, he's gonna get drafted high.
right,
So
right, yeah, that's not going to affect. Yeah, that's
don't disrespect it. I'm really saying don't disrespect Northwestern like that.
right.
They can really coach. They have a.
I mean,
really
did we not see
coaching
their
staff.
best DB go in the first round last year? And from, I mean, I don't watch NFL, but from everything I've read, he's having a heck of a year for the Browns this year.
Heck of a year.
So yeah, that's that's stuff that like high school recruiting rankings people do. That's not stuff that people that get paid to do this for a living do. It's just sorry, just yeah. Alec McC, do you like where we are with Peyton Bowen for tomorrow? Yes, I would much rather be Notre Dame than anyone else when we go into this conversation.
You think him and Jackson Arnold will end up possibly being a package deal?
No, I don't think they're they could both end up at Notre Dame. I don't think they're a package deal. I mean, I think there's a scenario in which all three of those kids end up at Notre Dame. Him, Jackson Arnold, Peyton Bowen, and Ryan Yates. And I haven't seen him yet, but I've heard Peyton Bowen's little brother, who's in the 2024 class, is really good too. I haven't seen him yet.
I saw some film last week, and we talked about it, and we felt like Eli's very. I actually think Peyton, only because of special teams. I haven't seen Eli's special teams, kick returns and punt returns, but Peyton is very explosive.
He's a legit kick return guy.
Yes, like legit kick return guy.
Yeah,
I haven't seen Eli do that, but Eli is so good after the catch.
When
he catches,
is he more of an offensive player?
Yeah, he's wide receiver.
Okay.
Yeah, he's very good after the catch.
I think Notre Dame is going after Peyton Bowen because they like Peyton Bowen. They're going after Jackson Arnold because they like Jackson Arnold, although he's not their top quarterback candidate right now. And they're going after Ryan Yates because they like Ryan Yates. And they're all going to be takes depending on where they fit on the board. None of these guys, they just happen to play at the same school.
Yeah.
It's not a situation where, well, we want both of you guys. That also doesn't mean, to your point, John, that they may not still end up at the same school.
Yeah.
But it would be more of just because each in their own decides that Notre Dame is the best place for them. The quarterback thing in 2023 is going to be very interesting because my concern is that Notre Dame is going to be impatient. That's the worst thing that could happen is, Dante Moore's not going to decide until, 8 months from now. And when you get impatient and we just got to go get somebody, it's like you got to still push for the best that you can possibly get. And because you have Buckner, who's basically he is a true freshman. You have Drew Pine, who's basically true freshman eligibility wise. You have Steve Angeli, who's a solid player.
Right.
You've got to try to go for a home run in the 2023 class. Now, there comes a point in time where you're like, okay, we can't afford to not get a quarterback in this class. And we're just going to have to take a guy and then still recruit Dante.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're at that point yet.
Yeah.
I don't think you're at that point yet. I think we would have to get a few months down the road. If you get to the summer and Dante is still legitimately interested in you, that might be where you have to have a bit of a come to Jesus moment with him in regards to, hey, we've got to really know where we stand. Because after the summer, the quarterbacks are going to, the beginning of the summer, the quarterbacks will start making their decisions.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you got to put pressure on Dante to make a decision, but you got to talk to Dante about, hey, look, we just got to know where we stand.
Right.
And if you're like, hey, coach, I love you guys. Right now, you're probably third behind Michigan and somebody, Michigan State or something. Yeah. Then you may say, you know what, we gotta move on. Right now, we'll still recruit him and maybe bring him, we get two, but that's when you go to Chris Vizina or Jackson Arnold or Avery Johnson or whoever the case may be. Nico, if whatever his situation is, because it's too good of a year to strike out and not get a top 15 quarterback in this class.
Right.
You have to. Because a top 15 quarterback in this particular class, from what I've seen so far, will most likely be a top 100 player. This is an absolutely loaded quarterback class. But you also can't take number 11 in a panic move because you're afraid you get no one. when you've got a chance at number 1 or 2. And that's how I think. I think Dante Moore is one of the 2 best quarterbacks in this class. I think him and Malachi Nelson are probably my top 2. Arch is probably 3rd or 4th for me. Arch is really good. Don't get me wrong. Arch isn't quite to the level of because he's just not there yet. But I mean, any of those guys would be big time pickups.
See, this is one thing you make, and you would know. You sit in that room and you talk, and it's Tommy and it's Marcus Freeman, anybody else that will be involved with this recruiting or the recruiting of the quarterbacks, and you say to yourself, okay, is there one must-have, or are we talking about 2 must-haves? Like, give me those must-haves. If Dante and somebody else is in that box of must-haves, then it's like, okay, if this guy wants to commit and we believe he's a must-have like Dante, then we feel comfortable taking him and still waiting on Dante or possibly losing Dante.
Right.
If Dante is the only one that's a must-have, then what you said definitely comes into play.
The other guys that would be that player, I don't think Notre Dame's going to get. As much as I love Dante, and I think he's better than Arch Manning, if Arch Manning called tomorrow and said, hey, I want to come to Notre Dame, I'd say, okay. I mean, yeah, you take him. If Malachi Nelson was like, yeah, I don't really want to go to USC and play for Lincoln Riley, I want to come to Notre Dame, you say, oh, okay, let's do it.
Right.
I don't know if I'd put Nico in that category right now. I think Nico physically is very gifted. I am still trying to find out about whether or not Nico would be a fit at Notre Dame. That's more of my concern. It's just I need to find – I'm not saying he isn't, but I've heard enough to make me say I'd have to do my homework on that.
Right.
You know, I don't know how I'd be worried about him coming and just not fitting in at Notre Dame and all the things that Notre Dame is and where Notre Dame's located and all that other kind of stuff and what a quarterback at Notre Dame has to be about. I have to do more homework on that. So he's not in that category yet. The only 3 guys that are in that category for me is Dante, who's my number 1, but then Arch. And I say Malachi Nelson just from a town. He's not coming to Notre Dame, right? Malachi's going to USC.
Right.
He's already followed Lincoln Riley to 2 different schools. He's going to play for Lincoln Riley, okay? And the other thing, too, is he was down to USC and Lincoln. He wanted to go to USC, I think, at the end of the day. I think that's where his heart was. But he also is a kid that understands I want to go play in the National Football League, and USC ain't getting me there.
Right.
And now the guy that you went to play for to get you the NFL at Oklahoma is now at USC. He is not going anywhere but USC, in my opinion. So, but I'm just saying talent-wise, he'd be the only those are the only 3 that I would look at and say, if they called up tomorrow, those 2 guys, Malachi and Arch, and said, hey, I want to come, I might make a call to Dante and say, hey, man, look, here's the deal. Where are we at? You know?
Yeah.
And do you want to commit now? But most than likely, I just would take their commitment. On the spot, I would just take their commitment.
Stay locked in with Irish Breakdown Recruiting. It's going to be a fun spring and summer.
Speaking of Nico, part of the reason I'm waiting is because I know, Sean, you're going to probably have something here with him coming up here.
Yeah, coming up in the next month or so. I'm going to be speaking to Nico and talking to him and really digging in on, what makes him tick. It's a lot of detractors out there. It's talking about his size and some other things and the competition he's faced out there.
None of that stuff bothers me at all. Physically, he's got a ton of tools. I like Nico physically as a player. It's some of the other things go to being a quarterback that I just can't evaluate yet that, kind of caused me to have a concern.
Well, there's somebody in the chat that says they're blaming me if we don't get Dante Moore. It's like the pressure. The pressure. Okay.
So he's already trying to fire you on day 2.
Do I get bonuses if I get these guys? My bad, Cardell Tate and Dante Moore. Do I get a bonus?
Yeah. We have to do something. We have to talk about that. All right. We'll have to talk about that. No question. We'll have some conversations about your recruit commit bonuses. Okay.
Recruiting package.
Yes, exactly.
I'm excited.
Quarterback's important in that class. That's the kind of thing. At the end of the day, that's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key. All right. And then Coach Vic says, what do we need to do to start getting taller 5-star quarterbacks? I honestly do not care one lick about that. I don't. I mean, Oklahoma did all right with a couple midget quarterbacks, right? I mean, Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. I just don't care about that. I think that in a shotgun-based offense, as a 6-foot quarterback, I can assure you a 6-foot quarterback, my high school offensive linemen were 6'4" and 6'5", right? I mean, you just have to. I mean, I don't care. I don't care about height. Now, if the kid's 5'5", that's a different conversation. I'm talking about realistic. I mean, Kyler Murray's 5'10" and a half.
Right.
Okay, and he was fine. Tyler Buckner's over 6 feet tall. He's got plenty of height in a shotgun-based offense. So, if a guy's 6'5", great, phenomenal. If a guy's 6 foot, 6'1", great, phenomenal. I'd put it like this: if Kyler Murray said, "Hey, I wanted to go to Notre Dame," I wouldn't have been like, "Sorry, buddy, you're not tall enough."
Yeah.
So the game has changed. Like 15 years ago, Coach, that would have been it would have been a legitimate issue for me, because in under center, your first 3 steps as they're lifting up, and you're only 2-3 steps behind the offensive line. You can't see over them. That's why it mattered back then. But now on a shot, but by the time you got to the top of your drop, the passing lanes is open up. You could see the field. Well, in the shotgun, you see it all. I mean, you're there, you're already in that zone. So to me, it's not a huge deal for me. Now, there are some players who their height is a problem for them specifically, but it's not in general an issue for me anymore.
It's preference, right? You see people look, Bryce Young is what? Maybe 6, honestly, 6'1"?
Yeah.
Maybe. He might be.
And his starting left tackle is like 6'9".
Yeah.
Evan Neal's like 6'9".
Yeah. Let me say this. I have come to love quarterbacks. I've come to love quarterbacks that play with a certain rhythm, if that makes sense, Brian. If you watch Trevor Lawrence, he played with a certain rhythm. Of course, athletic, but he played with a certain rhythm. If you watch Bryce Young, he plays with a certain rhythm. The way he moves in the pocket, the way he recognizes where the pressure is coming from and adjusts and keeps his eyes down the field. Kyler Murray was able to do the same thing, even at his size. And that's something that I see in Caleb Williams from Oklahoma. Like, they just play with a certain rhythm, and no matter where the pressure is coming from, they're able to move and get to a space where they can deliver on time. And that's what you want in your quarterback. It's the only way I can describe it. You're looking for somebody that has that rhythm, that not necessarily is going to go 1-2 and just run. Somebody that can stand there, and at the last moment, if they need to run, they can. So, and Dante Moore probably fits that, because Dante Moore can move and he's athletic, but if you really watch his tape, it's almost like he doesn't want it.
He's a passer. Yeah. He is a passer. The player I've compared him to from that standpoint, and he's a different player, like physical skill set, is Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
Pat Mahomes to me is an athletic guy, but he'll use his athleticism to benefit him more 95% of the time as a passer.
Like a passer, yeah.
It's moving around, buying time, breaking tackles, but always keeping your eyes downfield, looking for a place to throw.
Right.
That's more the style. Again, I'm not saying he's Pat Mahomes. I'm not saying he's got the arm. I'm just saying there's athletic quarterbacks that are dual threat guys, Tyler Buckner, and then there's athletic quarterbacks who are still passers. They just can run if you need them to. And Trevor Lawrence was that way. Trevor Lawrence was always an athletic guy, but he was not really much of a runner as a freshman. That part of his game evolved into his tenure at Clemson. But if you go back and watch the freshman year, he'd do the occasional scramble or pull in a read zone, but he wasn't a guy that was running a ton his first couple of years. So I think that to me is, and like there's the Tyler Buckners, the Kyler Murrays in one category, and then there's the Lamar Jackson's in a completely different category, and then there's the guys like a Sam Howell his first couple of years. I mean, Sam Howell became a runner, but he was always an athletic kid that he used that as a passer more than he did as a runner. So that's the way that I see it. Connor Patton, I love this question, Sean. Have you all seen LSU's schedule for the next few years? I sense excuses coming. We're going to hear the word rebuilding a lot from Brian Kelly next year.
Not at LSU.
We're going to hear it from him. It's not going to be accepted, but we're going to hear it from him. Here's their schedule next year. They open up again in Mercedes-Benz Superdome against Florida State. Then they play Southern, Mississippi State, New Mexico. So not a bad start.
Yeah.
Then it's at Auburn, home against Tennessee, at Florida, home against Ole Miss, home against Bama, at Arkansas, home against UAB, at Texas A&M. That's going to be a little bit interesting for old Coach Kelly.
Well,
And then
he's finally at a place where he feels like he has the talent, though. So
yes, right, because it was always the players' problem. It was always the players' faults. And then in 2023, they open up against Florida State in Orlando. They play Army. They play at Bama, at Mississippi State, at Missouri, at Ole Miss, home against Florida, home against Auburn, home against Arkansas. So yeah, the schedules are not going to be overly easy. 2024, they start the season off in Las Vegas against USC.
Oh, USC will be by 2024.
By year 3 of Lincoln Riley.
Yeah. That's a
and they got to play at Florida that year. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
That will be a problem.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem. But yes, we will hear Brian Kelly using the rebuild word a lot next year, in my opinion. Bent ND, do you expect staff openings to be filled quickly after the game? Yeah, I would imagine I would imagine, get at least 2 or 3 announcements this week.
Yeah. Like
after the game, I would imagine. I think within the next couple weeks, we'll see the staff relatively close to being filled. Because number one, if he's going to go with certain promotions from within, you announce those right away.
Yeah.
You don't, you need to do any background checks on those guys. That's the other thing too, is how Notre Dame operates. They may have, but in that case, we would start to hear that. We would start to hear that those guys are
kind of going in that direction. Go out Monday, Tuesday.
What's that?
Because they'll travel back, and then the release about if it is indeed coaches that are in the system already, you'll hear about that Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, I would think so. Like, let's just say hypothetically that Mike Elson's going to get promoted to DC coordinator, right? Just for argument's sake,
right?
Or Nick Lazinski's going to get promoted to linebackers coach or something, right? Like, we would hear those kind of things pretty much right away, and I would imagine that it would be Elston first, then Lazinski, that kind of thing. Or if Lazinski's going to be the special, any kind of promotion from within is going to happen first.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how that would, and that would happen, like you said, Sean, pretty quickly. There's no advantage to, if Mike Elson is your choice, there's no advantage to letting it drag out. Because then what happens is, if you announce him in 2 weeks, it looks like you went after other people and didn't get them, and you're settling on Coach Elston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If he is going to be your guy, it needs to be announced this week, in my opinion. Now, you may have other guys that you want instead that you pursue, but you got to make them tell you no now.
Yeah.
You can't wait a couple weeks. Like, no, do you want to come here, or yes or no? You know what I mean? And if the answer is I'm not sure, then, you either say, well, we got to move this quickly because we're going to announce by the end of the week. If you want to be here, let me know, because we know one guy that definitely wants the job and wants to be here.
That's a fact.
So, and obviously for those who may not know who we're referring to, we're talking about Mike Elston in that instance.
And I had no interest in watching Iowa State play, but because of the news of their DC possibly being a candidate, I was like, okay, let me watch.
Right.
And
same thing with the Houston Auburn game with Doug Belk.
Right. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Nicholas Grosh says, thank you, IB, for making a good season better. You are welcome, and thank you for saying that. Patrick Hoyle, please put me down for 2 for Marlies. If they can't accommodate, no worries. We'll figure it out. Yes, come. We'll figure something out. Yes, come join. No question about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I wish Sean was there, but, he's stuck in Chicago.
Sean wishes he was there as well.
Yeah, here's a good question. Super Mark here. Love the name, by the way. But how much do you think Oklahoma State's defensive coordinator Jim Knowles leaving affects their team? Sean, take first crack at that. I'm curious what you think of that.
I don't think – see, this is the thing, and this is what I'm interested in watching, even with Notre Dame as well. There is a rhythm to play calling when you're a coordinator, whether it's offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. And that's one thing that won't be the same between Marcus Freeman and Elston. It won't be the same. Now, you will have a certain continuity that exists there, I think Mike Elston has watched and had enough conversations on flights back to know what Marcus Freeman would be thinking in certain situations, along with what he's thinking. So it won't be too far off. And it's the same thing with Oklahoma State. You know, the guys have been there with Jim Knowles. They know what their players do best. So I don't think they're going to go too far. They're not about to install something totally different outside of what they've been doing all year to make them successful. So the calls are the calls, and ultimately the players go out there and execute the calls. So there might be one or two plays, and I'm sure Brian, you know, with his brain and the way he sees the game, on the post-game show is going to say, you know what, I'm not sure what Oklahoma State was thinking on this third down at this yardage. I don't know why they would play this. I don't know why they would bring the safety into the box or why they would play this 13 package by Notre Dame the way they played it. But, you know, those are just isolated incidents that happen pretty much in every football game. So I don't think there'll be much of a difference. You got yourself. You muted yourself.
Apologies. I think it's an unknown at this point in time for a lot of the reasons Sean said. The same thing with Notre Dame. I mean, at the end of the day, however, you know, Mike Elston needs to call what he thinks he should call, not what. And this is kind of what you're saying is, you know what how Marcus Freeman likes to do things, but when you get in the game, it's here's what you think you need to do. And if Marcus Freeman wants to let you know what he thinks you should do, he's going to get on the headset and tell you, this is what I want you to do on third down. So it's same thing with Oklahoma State. You have to still be you. You have to still be what you're comfortable with. There may be a call that Jim Knowles made that you were never comfortable with, and it worked because Jim just knew when exactly to do it and how to do it, that you just don't feel. If you try to mimic him, you're going to end up making mistakes, and then that's where you end up giving big plays. You got to be yourself. And so will it affect the team? Yes. And Jim Knowles not being there will affect them. Marcus Freeman not being the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame will affect Notre Dame. Now, will it affect them in regards to it's just going to look different but have the same result?
Yeah.
That's still affecting them. It's just not a negative impact, right? And that's the key, is not that the defense will look different with Mike Elston calling the defense than it did with Marcus Freeman, because they're two different people. Yeah. Even though they know the defense, they're two different people. Mm-hmm. But it's going to affect it. What we don't know is, will it be a negative impact or not? Yeah. That's the question. And that's what I can't answer, because I don't know the coaches there well enough. And Mike Gundy's very involved in the defense, and Mike Gundy's a smart and successful football coach. He's going to have a say in this as well, just like the Notre Dame head coach is going to have a say in the defense.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's still going to look different. And that's going to be the key.
For example, regardless of Mike Elston making the play calls or Marcus Freeman, if Oklahoma State decides to leave their left tackle one-on-one with Isaiah Foskey, it's going to be a problem. Mm-hmm. I don't care what the play call is. It's going to be a problem. Like, they better have a plan to chip, run at him, or slow him down, because if they don't, he's going to find a way to wreak havoc in the passing game. So ultimately, it comes down to the players. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, you can make really good calls at certain times in the game, especially calls, as I said before, Bronco Mendenhall was very complimentary of Marcus Freeman during the post game against Virginia for how he creates deception, you know, in his play calls. So I think Mike Elko is a very smart man. Mm-hmm. And he knows the opportunity that's facing him right now.
Mike Elston.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What did I say?
Mike Elko is also a very smart man.
I did. Man, wow.
Well, you were thinking of diverse and creative defensive coordinators, and of course you thought of Mike Elko because he was very much that in his year at Notre Dame.
Thank you for having my back with that explanation. That wasn't the case, but
I knew where your head was at, buddy.
No, but Mike Elston is definitely a very smart individual. He knows the opportunity he has in this Fiesta Bowl, and I expect him to rise to the occasion. Mm-hmm.
Anthony Solomon with a little change of opinion here, or change of topic here. I want to join there's some conversation going on about people saying like their wives think that they love Irish Breakdown a little too much. Anthony Solomon says, I want to join in the my wife thinks I love IB more than her club. I appreciate that, but I think if that's the case, fellas, make sure that you take your wives out somewhere very, very special the next couple of days once the season's over with, and reiterate your love for her, okay? And you just let her know it's not that I love Ivy more. It's just during the season, it's a little bit more time sensitive. Okay. My love has gone nowhere, and you just remind her of that, and then just maybe be a little bit more discreet with some of your shows because we're still gonna have a lot of shows.
Can we break something here?
Sure, go for it.
Brian, this is from a good friend of mine, Ted Albrecht, former NFL player, and for the Chicago Bears, and the color analyst for Northwestern football on the radio side. I said, Ted, tell me about Brandon Joseph. His words, not mine. And then, Brian, you respond the way you feel like you want to respond.
Mm-hmm.
He's very savvy, high football and everyday IQ. He anticipates very well, always in the right place at the right time. He was the third leading tackler with 80 tackles, and he's well respected as he was a captain. It's a big loss for the secondary and for the entire team. And wonderful attitude, great locker room guy, big leader. He'll be missed. Hard worker too. Now, for me, that sounds like a really good football player. Doesn't sound like so.
Well, I'll tell you this, Sean. I'm asking you this.
That's from a guy he's watched every game he's ever played at Northwestern.
Let me ask you this. That sounds a lot like Alohi Gilman.
Yeah.
Would you take another Alohi Gilman right now?
I will take a Alohi Gilman every year.
Okay, right. So I mean, so does that kind of change your view on what he?
It wasn't about changing my view. I was just going by what I was just trying to make sure that people understood. Mm-hmm. Like, you're bringing in a guy that's an Alohi Gilman, but Alohi Gilman came in. What was the depth?
Well, he also came in. He was younger. I mean, he had to sit out a year, then played 2 years.
But what was behind him? As far as recruiting class,
I mean, safety was a mess, and I still think it's a problem. I think the two young kids are really good, but again, if you've got Ramon and Xavier are what we think they can be next year, again, just as guys really going into their first full year of safety, they're going to be good football players.
They're both free right now,
right? And the safety position is interchangeable in a lot of ways. But the point is, I don't think either are going to be maxed out next year.
Yeah.
You know, you have to say, okay, so then do you want that third and fourth safety to be Houston and DJ? That's the question. Or do you want it to be Brandon Joseph? Meaning he's comes in and he's, part of that 3-man rotation. He's going to, that's the question you have to ask yourself. And that's why I say it's not as easy just saying, well, hey, because there's a lot of things in to say, okay, so what you're saying is he's clearly not Kyle Hamilton. He's not a Xavier Nwankpa type of athlete. That's fine. We understood that. But it sounds like he brings a lot of value, a lot of experience, and more of a playmaking. It sounds a lot like things we've said about Houston in regards to, we're in the right place at the right time, but from a more consistent, productive, impactful standpoint, not Houston, I'm sorry, DJ Brown. I'm going to say DJ Brown. DJ's in a good position, but this kid's a better athlete than DJ is. I mean, I do know that from what little I've seen of Brandon Joseph, I do know he's a better athlete than him. And, we could say, well, you want to see what Houston can do. And I do want to see what Houston can do as a fifth year, but same time, Houston's a senior now.
Right.
And you can't keep waiting around for him to be the guy we think he can be.
Yeah.
I mean, that just.
Now, I will say this, and this goes to the point what Marcus Freeman wants to walk into the horseshoe with. And probably he doesn't want to have to depend on two youngsters from a communication standpoint. Because, if you go in
and then two veterans who you don't know athletically if you can play there.
Absolutely. So now, if you add Brandon Joseph, you're adding a guy who's a team leader, great in the locker room, high IQ, can communicate on the back end, make sure everybody's in the right place. And now your youngsters can just play.
Mm-hmm.
They can just play, grow another year at the position, and then they can become the vocal leaders on the back end the following year. And then the following year, you have two stud safeties coming in that are young to give you that versatility. So, he would actually be, to get him would actually be a great bridge to what you're already building.
If he is what that guy says. And again, my opinion hasn't changed, folks. I'm going to have to watch the film.
Yeah.
I can't tell you whether I do or don't. I can just say if he's this, then yes. If he's not that, then no.
Yeah.
I'll watch the film and give you a better opinion. Because again, I don't want to just jump on, well, he was an All-American and he, this guy who I don't know thinks he's a really good. Oh, that's all great. That's all part of the data points.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I got to watch the film and come to my own conclusion.
Yeah.
And
I knew I could get something direct from the source,
mm-hmm.
unbiased, someone that's watched him play every single snap of his career at Northwestern. And
so we got about 20 minutes left. So I want to get to some questions here real quick because we got to head to Marley's here in about 20 minutes. Spark 5219, what's the first offensive play, run or pass? I'm hoping it's a bomb. I'm hoping they run a play action, launch that sucker down the field, one-on-one to Braden Lindsey or one-on-one to Michael Mayer on a wheel route or a go route or a post route to Kevin Hall. Just throw a bomb. I'd prefer an outside bomb where maybe the safety can't make as much of a play on it if they read it, but I'd love to see them just say, hey, you know what? We're coming at you hard today. We're coming at you hard.
I'll dig deeper on that. Forget pass or run. Tell me the formation you want, the group set you want them to come out in.
I'm going 12 personnel.
You want
I'm 12? Going 12 personnel because I want them thinking run, right? I want them thinking we're going to run at you. We're Notre Dame. We're going to run at you. I'm going to go 12 personnel. I want them to motion the tight end across and start in a 3-by-1 with a tight end in the wing, motion that guy across to give you an inside zone look where that guy blocks backside, run a play action pass. So you kind of have a balanced 7-man protection. I'm running a post drag on the first play of the game. That's what I'm running.
There you go.
That's what I'm running. Based on what Oklahoma State does and how active their safeties are, I'm letting them know snap one. You better be careful coming.
Be careful.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing, snap one. Nick Paris says, what are your thoughts on coordinators being in the press box versus the field? Example, Clark Lee was a press box guy while Fremo's on the field. Is it mostly personal? It's not mostly personal preference, Nick. It's all personal preference.
Yeah.
There are instances where I think you might have to have a guy because of maybe there's a communication problem or, he's not good at getting the calls down and there may be some things there. But at the end of the day, barring some kind of circumstance that has come up, I think it's up to the coaches to their personal preference. This would be an example of when it'd be, I'd say, you do what you've been doing. What I mean is if Mike Elson as a D coordinator would prefer to be a box guy, I would make him be a field guy for this game. Because your operation all year has been Mike Elson on the, down there on the sideline with the D line. I want as much of that to continue as possible. So for this game, I'd say, hey, I want to keep you down on the field. And if you end up getting the job, then next year we can move you up to the box because then we have the whole offseason to change our operation and figure out and get everybody on the same page. But for this game right now, I want you still down there with the D line and all that kind of stuff.
And you always told me it depends. Either way, you have to have someone you trust up in the booth.
Or someone you trust downstairs to get the calls in. Yes. Right. Yeah, you have to be surrounded by people you trust. But I think it's especially true if you're on the field. Because, down there, you're making a call to 3 or 4 people. There can be some accountability. Like, oh, dude, you just sent in the wrong call. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have people that are going to see that. You have to have someone upstairs that's being able to tell you what you're seeing on the other sideline. You have to. That's imperative. Sean Lacero, interesting question. Are we expecting too much for Coach Freeman to change the culture of how Notre Dame plays in big games in 30 days after Kelly had 12 years to ingrain a certain mentality? He hasn't even had an offseason. No, I don't think we're expecting too much, Sean, to be honest with you. I think it would be expecting too much if it was like, hey, we're going to change the offensive philosophy and we're going to change the defense and we're going to change all these bigger picture things. But to me, 15 practices is enough time to get guys to understand this. There's an energy level. Because here's the thing, Sean. I think Brian Kelly tamped that stuff down. I don't think it was something that the players necessarily naturally were that way. It was tamped down in those big game moments. It was, hey, let's take a step back. But also, it's how you prepare. When you prepare in a very methodical type of way, like one thing I've been told about how practices went at Notre Dame, especially offensively, they would script for success is what I've been told for years.
Right.
What that means is you kind of get the defensive scout team in the looks you want them in, and then you run the plays you think will work against those plays. I hate that. Like, to me, that's what you do on like either Tuesday or Thursday, depending on which day. Like, what I mean by that is Tuesday is like, hey, look, we want day one to be we get off to a good start. So let's put the looks in there that we know that they're going to do, that we think we can get them in, that we think these players are going to work, and let's have a good. Let's start the week off with a successful Tuesday, right?
Right.
Terrific Tuesday, and call it that. Terrific Tuesday, or whatever the case may be. You know, coaches like to have names for what the day is, right?
Right.
Whatever. Then Wednesday you start to ramp it up a little bit more, and then Thursday you just throw a bunch of stuff at them, and because you can script. Hey, if we make this call against this look, it's not good. We're gonna have to go to the third option.
Right.
You need to script that in the week if you want the quarterback to know where to go with the ball when it happens in a game.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be some times where you're throwing all the looks you're throwing at them are not the ideal looks for those particular plays.
Yeah.
To see, does the quarterback make the change? Do the receivers make the side adjusts, or do they make the right post snap reactions? Or are they handling the route that they need? Do they need to, out of their top end, need to break it off a certain way if they get a look that where they're not really thinking about? You may throw some looks at them that they haven't even shown on film that they could do based on the structure of who they are.
Yeah.
You have to have days like that. And what I was told is that offensively a lot. Now, I don't know so much about this season, but in a lot of past seasons, last year, years before that, they scripted for success. And I think a lot of that had to do with how Coach Kelly wanted it run. So those are the type of things that absolutely in 15 days, if you're coaching it a certain way, is going to impact them being mentally and emotionally ready to play the game. If this was a situation, Sean, where it was literally Brian Kelly left after the Stanford game and Notre Dame had to play a game that Saturday or in 2 Saturdays, no, I wouldn't expect him to have that big of an impact. But as you said, they've had a month, 30 days. You got to think about how much work they've done in 30 days. Weight room work, locker room, meetings, practice. There's been a lot of things where it's like, hey, this is who we are now. 30 days is a lot of time to do that, because it's not just the 15 practices. It's when you're in the weight room with Coach Bayless, this is the tempo we're going at. And hey, Coach Bayless, I want those kids hyped up. I just want to, because here's the thing, players more often than not don't need to be pushed to be fired up at practice. That's just who they are. It's you gotta pull the reins back sometimes to make sure they're not being too emotional and those type of things. Yeah. And sometimes you can pull the reins back too far. Brian Kelly pulled the reins back too far. You have to give them structure. I've said this before. It's structured chaos. Football. The greatest football coaches know how to master structured chaos. And if you can do that, then you're gonna be really good. Because you're going to have the energy, you're going to have the emotion, and you're going to be able to steer it in the right direction with everybody all together. And I think that's why I think we can see that. We're not asking to do miracles. It's not changing the system and the scheme and the philosophy. That stuff takes an off season. You're not developing new leaders in 30 days. That takes an off season. But working on, like, to me, the emotion, the energy level, the tempo with which you go at things, absolutely, I think is a month. A month is enough time to get that going.
I second everything you just said. And the only thing I'll add to it is, Sean, great name, by the way, but don't ask us. Of course, we're excited. But all of this excitement about the change, all of this stuff was anticipated by the players. They started this groundswell,
right?
Former and current, for Marcus Freeman. They pumped it up. They got what they wanted, and they've been the ones that have been very transparent about the difference between what was happening and what has been happening in the last 30 days in the 15 practices. We don't need to talk about it because they've been saying plenty about it, the players, and what it's meant to them and how they feel. And they've made reference to how it will impact the way they start this game. Mm-hmm. They've said that. So if they expect to start faster because of the way things have gone, then that's all you need.
Right.
It's really not about what we're saying. They expect.
It confirms what we think.
Yeah.
And that's the key.
Yep.
That's the key. Let's get down here. Here's a good one. Sean Rogers. A lot of Seans in the show today. I feel like I'm being ganged up on. We got to get some more Brians in the house, okay? And what I like about it is all three y'all spell your names completely differently, which is great. This is Sean Rogers asks, Brian, which safety has the higher upside, Bowen or Xavier Nwankpa? Honestly, it's funny you're asking this because my buddy Tony asked me this the other day, and I said, I think Xavier Nwankpa was the better football player, or excuse me, the better safety as a junior.
Mm-hmm.
He was more technically sound. He was more, played angles. I think right now, good technique. I mean, Xavier's a technical assassin
Yeah.
at the high school level, right? He's the better safety right now. I think that Peyton Bowen is the better athlete. He's the more explosive athlete.
Absolutely.
And that's usually where the higher upside is going to be. Now, Peyton Bowen is still a good football player. Don't get me wrong. It's just a lot of what he's doing as a junior is based on that kid's just really talented.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a lot of there's plays where he'll flip his hips and I'm like, oh, whoa, that's ugly. And he gets beat by like 4 steps. But then all of a sudden you just kind of
the recovery speed is
right.
ridiculous.
And then there's other times where he flips his hips and you're like, whoo, that was pretty, right? That's this kid that just doesn't have the technique down yet as a junior in high school.
Right.
Understandable. So then I look, I say, okay, well, when I watch what Notre Dame safeties did this year and the development under Chris O'Leary and Marcus Freeman, all this, you say that kid's going to get taught those things. Is the athleticism there? Is the hitting ability there? Is the range there? The instincts there? All those things are there. Yeah. He just has to learn how to fundamentally play the game better. And so that's why I say he has more upside. I think I'm more certain at the same age that Xavier Nwankpa could have come in and played as a freshman. I'm more certain of that.
Mm-hmm.
Peyton's got to grow his game a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I could project 3 years down the road, both of them get to their full potential or close to it, who's the better player? It's going to be Peyton Bowen, in my opinion. But they're both excellent players. They're both excellent players. And just because Xavier's going to Iowa doesn't mean that my stance on him is all of a sudden going to change. He would have been an excellent player at Notre Dame. I mean, if Xavier Nwankpa would have picked Notre Dame, we're not having a conversation about Brandon Joseph right now.
At all.
In my opinion. I don't think so.
And I'll say this, I love what the staff, in my opinion, what they've been doing and what they're going to continue to do, which is to go out and, look at guys at the positions they're playing, but really identify kids that just have a myriad of just a boatload of talent and can play multiple positions on the field.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're watching kids on film saying, okay, that's our strong safety. I think they're watching kids saying, wow, he might play corner. Heck, we might put him in roll. We might put him in safety. We don't know. We just want to get him in here. And Peyton Bowen will return kicks his freshman year if he chooses Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Whether kickoff or punt return, he'll return kicks until he gets his opportunity at safety. So he's going to impact the game on Saturdays.
Right.
I feel very comfortable.
And there's a lot of – he's still a junior. There's still summer camps and, all that stuff that he'll get better at that. There's no question about that. But that's what I say upside-wise. That's a good question. It's a good question. Now, what would have been even nicer is if they would have landed X in this class and Peyton in the 2023 class. That's where I would have rather been, Can
you imagine that trio, X, Adon Schuler, and Peyton Bowen?
Yeah, that'd be fun to watch. That'd be really fun to watch. UIW Swimmer says, Elston has learned from Mike Elko, Clark Lee, and Marcus Freeman. I have a feeling he has better creds than any outside candidates will. It's not so much about creds, though. I almost kind of feel like in some ways that might even take away from Mike Elston's actual talent as a play caller if he proves that to Marcus Freeman, and not just a play caller, but a game plan designer and a practice organizer, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Look, all those things are great. There's been a lot of coaches that have worked under some other great coaches that just aren't coordinators. There's been I'm a Broncos fan. If we don't know by now that Vic Fangio is a great defensive coordinator that has no business being a head coach, then, but it doesn't mean he wasn't a great defensive coordinator. It just, some guys aren't meant to be in those type of roles. If Mike Elston proves that he's there, it's not because necessarily he learned from those coaches. And I would throw Bob Diaco in that conversation as well. I think Bob Diaco did some nice things in Notre Dame, as strange as he was. It's because he proved over the last 15 practices and in this game that he has the chops to be a defensive coordinator, which those creds don't really have a lot to do with. They help someone with the chops be great, right? Yeah. But if you don't have the chops, I don't care. Sean, you know this. I've seen guys that coach for 30 years. Kerry Coombs is a great example. Kerry Coombs is a veteran coach. He's been an NFL assistant coach. He was a great cornerbacks coach at Ohio State. He gets promoted to offense defensive coordinator. And you're like, did this guy forget how to coach or something?
Yeah.
Like, because some guys just aren't great coordinators. That's just a reality.
And it's a skill to it, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely.
It's a skill to it.
It's more artistic. It's an art form, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. It really is.
And I think it's really about, well, I can't put it all on who your mentor is, but it's feel, right? It just happens to be a father-son. But look, the Shanahans just have a certain feel.
Right. But we've also seen sons who can't
fail.
coach.
Yes.
So you either have the chops, you don't, and then it's like with anything. It's like, any athlete. It's like, okay, you always had the God-given ability, but do they harness that athleticism to make you a great player or not? That's you and I both know this. You're from Chicago. I'm from Norfolk, Virginia. We've both seen guys at the playground that you're like, how's that guy not, playing pro ball somewhere, right? And you find out, well, here's why. Here's the reason. I still feel like no matter who your dad is or who you've learned under, if you don't have the chops, you don't have the chops, right? But that mentorship and it can help you develop, harness the gifts that you had, in my opinion, is kind of how I look at it.
Yep.
I mean, there's guys that have coached under Luke Fickell and played at Ohio State and all those kind of things that aren't as good as Marcus Freeman.
Aren't as good as Marcus Freeman.
Garen Knutson says, being a young head coach, does Marcus Freeman have to settle for young and inexperienced coaches? I don't think he's settling for anything. He's not settling for anybody. I mean, he's going to go out and get the guys he wants and the guys that want to be here. I mean, every coach is going to get turned down for jobs. I mean, by some coaches that they may want. It just, if he's bringing in a guy that doesn't have experience because he thinks that guy can help him a ton, that's a fact.
Does that bother you?
What?
Like, because at some point, we all want the resume to look a certain way.
Sure.
But if you're HR and you're hiring, you have to be able to recognize those gifts and talents that might be outside of what you expect that perfect thing or that perfect candidate to look like. And Marcus Freeman has a personal relationship. For example, the news that's come down about, James Laurinaitis. You have to trust Marcus Freeman knowing him. And we don't know what specifically he's going to do, but you have to trust Marcus Freeman knowing him. If Marcus Freeman watches Mike Elston and says, yo, I still want somebody else as DC that fits what I'm looking for as far as flow of play calling and everything, then you have to trust that, know. But would you say going into this game, this is Mike Elston's job to lose?
No, I wouldn't say that necessarily. Okay. I think there's some legitimately good candidates out there that are, from what I'm told, have interest in the job. I think it's more of Mike Elston's job to win. More so.
Okay.
Because, again, Marcus Freeman has a great understanding of what Mike Elko can do as a defensive line coach and recruiter.
See, I messed you up too. You said Mike Elko.
Did I really?
You did.
Dang it, Sean.
My fault. I'm sorry, buddy. That's my fault. I brought it
so
to
before Sean completely, because I never get names wrong, ever, until Sean messed me up, right? Mike Elston proved to Marcus Freeman his chops as a defensive line coach and recruiting coordinator. Recruiting coordinator and recruiter.
Yeah.
That in no way shows him what kind of defensive coordinator he can be.
Right.
You really don't know that until you see him put this game plan together and lead the practice and lead the staff. There's so much that goes into being a coordinator that has nothing to do with what happens on game day. Game day is like I said, as I said before, you could be great at game day and bad at everything else, and you're not going to be a good D coordinator. Those are the things that Mike Elston is showing him now. Mike Elston has basically been on a 15 practice audition for the job that culminates with, like, this is your final interview. I think I honestly would be willing to bet that he went into this process, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how this all plays out. I'll be willing to bet you that if Mike Elston gets this job, I'd be willing to bet you $50 that I'm going to find out from multiple good sources that Marcus Freeman was not leaning in that direction when the process began. I'd be willing to bet you $50 if that's true. Monopoly money.
I would probably,
so the gold $50, the little tiny gold $50, not a real $50.
No, I would add 20 to that pot and take that bet along your side, alongside.
Okay, so we're on the same page. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think if he goes with Mike Elson, it's because Mike Elson proved to him, like, you know what, the guy that I need to bring in is right there. Like, he's been here all along. But again, you can't prove that as just a D line coach. You need to be in that opportunity.
Yep.
That's unfair. I get that, but people say, well, I can't believe this guy's not getting the opportunity as a head coach, and I can't believe this guy. Look, the reality is, at the end of the day, if you're making a hire that's very, very important, you're going to always value experience and proven success at that position over someone you think can be
Yeah.
good at it. And I think that's especially true for Marcus Freeman. He has to get this hire right. He has to get all these hires right for the
Yeah.
most part, you know. But if you have a bad receivers coach, but you're good everywhere else or great everywhere else, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
You got a bad coordinator and you're great everywhere else, you're screwed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or a mediocre coordinator. This is a much more important hire than whoever the linebackers coach is going to be.
I agree.
He's got to get it right. And so now you've seen Mike Elson do the job if you choose to go that route. And again, we're not saying he's going to go that route. We don't know. I've been told by some people that Mike Elson's not a candidate. I've been told by some other people that I trust and that I know that saying that he is a candidate. We'll have to find that out.
Yeah.
But if he is hired, it's because he proved over the last 15 practices and tomorrow that he can do this job at an elite level. And then that allows for continuity within the program. And I think Marcus Freeman would like continuity if it's the right type of continuity. And clearly he doesn't. Like, here's the big danger for me. If I'm Marcus Freeman, the most challenging decision to make in regards to who to keep on staff is Mike Elston. Because this has got to be your program now. It can't be Brian Kelly's anymore.
Right.
And you need to obviously make a shift away from what kept Brian Kelly from taking that next step. The most long-term, like, loyal Brian Kelly person is Mike Elson. That often can be your biggest worry.
Yeah.
Is this guy going to try to do it the Brian Kelly way? Is this guy someone who's going to always kind of have that agenda? It can be difficult. So for Marcus Freeman to have wanted Mike Elson like immediately, no brainer, tells me that they clicked really quickly.
Yeah.
And that he thinks Mike Elson is going to allow continuity, but also not hinder you from making a course correction or a course shift. That can be challenging with a guy that's been at a place for 12 years that you've only been at one for one. You know, it's like, I'm accepting the changes you want to make, and I can continue to enhance the things that we want to keep the same.
Yep.
And if you can't do this, the first part, then you got to move on from somebody. And I think that tells me a lot about what he thinks about Mike Elson's ability to do that. So let's got a few more super chats before we get out of here, Sean. And again, I apologize to everybody. We kind of went a little long on some of these, and we are a bit on a time crunch because I have to head over to Marley's here. We're going to get started here in about a half an hour. And I believe we have a couple more super chats down here. Let me get to here before we go. A lot of great stuff today. Robert Jarowski, go Irish. We are going to see a wide open offensive explosion tomorrow. I hope you're right. We talked about this yesterday, Sean. If they're able to just like really just come out and just smoke Oklahoma State, because this is a really good defense, that would be
that would say a lot.
Yes. Because this is a really good. I'm going to reiterate it again. This is a really good defense.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean.
There'll be opportunities though.
Yeah.
I really do believe that certain things you talked about, the aggression in the back end, how aggressive they are. They're susceptible to tight ends. Tommy Reese talked about this week. He expects them to do certain things with their safeties and their linebackers to double Michael Mayer, because they did that with the tight end. Both of the tight ends they faced that were dominant tight ends, the kid from Iowa State, and I think the other kid was from Kansas State, if I'm not mistaken. Those two tight ends, that's what they did. They took them out of the game and doubled them. Now, Jack Cohn, in my opinion, Jack Cohn is, I don't know if you've been watching, but he took a beating in the chat today for no reason. I don't know why.
In this chat?
Yeah.
No,
he took a beating.
That's always the case. I mean, there's the people that especially some of the people that were like big pro Ian Book people for some reason, like that he could do no wrong, Jack Cohn can do no right. It just
I'll say this
is what it is.
I would much rather have Jack Cohn tomorrow than Spencer Sanders.
Agree. Paul Guard with a super chat. Thank you, Paul. Longtime season ticket holder, moved to Phoenix in 2015. Any events, pep rally, et cetera tonight? I don't know of any, Paul. I have no idea.
The band's not in town, so that would kill it.
I honestly don't know. And I would imagine with all the COVID concerns and making sure that you don't want to have it. I don't know if they're going to make players test tomorrow. You don't want to risk getting your players. I mean, like from now until tomorrow, until we get on the bus, I'm not having anybody but the team around the team.
Yeah.
That's just my thing. Here's an interesting one, Sean, before we kind of get out of here. Trejo says, only thing I was disagreeing with is that the two Hendersons and Xavier Watts is those two, Henderson and Xavier, would give us more than a proven Brandon Joseph. School and fans are so high on him, his stats speak for himself and experience. I imagine there was a conversation going on earlier. I think for me is I don't really care as much about stats and experience. I care about talent and fit. And if a kid has a talent can fit, then you make the move, right? I mean, I think that's the key. You got those things are more important. Talent, those things are. And he says, in super pressed, you'd be hard pressed to find a better stats anywhere in college from a safety in the past 2 years. All I'm saying, get all that, but none of that means how you'd fit. That means we know he can be productive in the Northwestern defense, which isn't like Notre Dame's defense. It's a completely different animal.
So basically, let me stop. Because I'm trying not to look.
Yeah.
Stop being a stat geek. Stop.
Right. It's part of the evaluation, but it's not.
It's just really not. It's really not, because he also said. See, I was paying attention. He also said his stats are better than Kyle Hamilton. But he's not a better player than Kyle Hamilton.
Well, yeah, exactly. From a sheer, because he played more games, right?
So once again, if he was that dude, scouts would tell him, "You're that dude. Enter your name into the draft." He's not. So now we have to see if he's a fit for Notre Dame. You assume, once again, my whole statement was, have respect for the talent that exists at Notre Dame. It's not like, from a talent standpoint, the guys that are in the locker room aren't good. You can say they're young. You might be able to say they're immature at the position or inconsistent. Fine. But they're talented. And what they can become with the coaching that they have and the coaching that identified them and put them in that position, who's to say they won't be better in the long run than Brandon Joseph? Now, what he adds would be a positive based upon what you pointed out, Brian, especially putting him at the other position and taking away the pressure off of the youngsters having to take on a lot of responsibility their first full season on the job. So, stats.
And I can't really give. I'm not saying he is or isn't a great player. I got to watch the film. I'm just saying that's not where, because I mean, Kane Madden's resume was phenomenal when they get him. So yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can get a couple more here before we get out of here. Appreciate everybody being part of the show today. I had a great crowd today here in the chat. Absolutely great crowd. Gregory Gilbert says, I hope everyone in the IB Nation has a wonderful and safe New Year's Eve. Love all of you. Yes, have a good time tonight, but be safe, be smart, and make sure you're still with us tomorrow. That's it.
We need that. Make it the kickoff.
Yeah. Yeah, some of these comments are kind of borderline. I'm saying some of the Jack Cohn stuff. Some of these are like comical.
Which is funny because, Notre Dame isn't sitting in this bowl if Jack Cohn doesn't transfer. I feel comfortable in saying that.
Yeah.
And I know we have people that are out there, the people's champ, Drew Pine.
And
Tyler
always
Buckner,
the way.
Tyler
always
Buckner,
how it goes.
Tyler Buckner should have been playing from snap one. It's like, okay.
Right.
You're not winning as many games.
Right.
With either.
Right. Will Claw, hey guys, thank you for the super chat, Will. I'll fix my debit card situation. Love my new IB merch. Let's win this game. Bowl game. Go Irish. Sorry, been busy this holiday season. I understand. Trust me. Believe me, I understand. So I had not only shopping and holidays, but I had a couple hires that I had to figure out how to make. So that didn't just come together overnight. So I feel your pain, my friend. I absolutely feel your pain. And I think that is it for the super chat, Sean. I'm just going to run through here again one more time.
Cool.
Before we go, do you have anything that you'd like to leave people with here? This is our last show of the 2021 season. Can you believe it, Sean? In January, neither one of us even had podcasts.
No,
like when this January 1 a year ago, we didn't have podcast. Lucky Lefty was not a thing. Irish Breakdown podcast was not really a thing. It was not even like the YouTube version was not even really a thing. It's been amazing. It's been an amazing year. It really has.
I would just like to say to everybody in IB Nation, thank you all for accepting me. Even when I was doing spot podcasts and coming on with Brian or Vince during the season. And I appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate the way you've supported me. Thank you for all of the well wishes and congratulations on social media and the follows and everything from the announcement yesterday. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for supporting Lucky Lefty. Thank you for supporting my big brothers and getting them to the status that they are today. Keep liking, keep sharing, keep subscribing, and keep pushing forward and make Irish Breakdown even bigger in this coming year.
Here's the thing I can promise. Thank you for saying all that, Sean. If you think 2021 was a great year for Irish Breakdown, we're just getting started. And again, as I've always said, it's all about y'all. And you think about where we've gone. January 1 of 2021, we barely had a podcast. We really didn't start taking the podcast thing seriously until my post-Alabama game rant. I was so fired up from that game with how Brian Kelly handled that team and comments he made after the game. Our podcast hadn't even really started being monetized yet. We had no message board to speak of. We were looking at it all just like, okay, we're going to keep plugging away because we believe in what we're doing, but I don't know where this thing is going. And you fast forward a year, my goal for the message board was to get to 1,000 subscribers by the time the 2022 football season started. Yeah. We're already way past that. My goal was to be monetized on the podcast by the beginning of this year's football season. We started in January. We got monetized by February. You know, just the growth we've seen has been phenomenal. And the growth is about you all. So thank you all so much. Because otherwise, it's me and Sean, just two dudes talking to ourselves on a podcast, right?
That's it.
And then our wives are like, hey, you got to get to your real job because nobody's listening to you. Nobody cares. We just made 2 new hires. I'm still trying to bring in some more. We had a great, phenomenal year, great growth, and it's because of you all. And from the bottom of my heart, and I know Sean feels the same way because we've talked about this off the air. Mm-hmm. We're so appreciative of our Notre Dame family, our Notre Dame community, and our Irish Breakdown family. And the comments that people said when I announced Sean was going to be hired, I probably got about a dozen comments of like, wait a minute, he wasn't already part of the staff. That's just kind of how some people felt, made me feel really good. I'm excited about what we're doing. I know Vince is excited about what we're doing. Ryan's on vacation. That's why he hasn't been on the show this week. Ryan's actually on vacation, which says a lot about how he got that Peyton Bowen commit preview while on vacation.
Right.
Okay. So he's excited, but it's been a blast. I've loved this family that we've built so much, and I want to keep growing it and keep making it bigger and stronger. And man, I can't wait to see it. And hey, look, for some of you, we're going to sign off, run down to the car, hop in, head to Marley's. So I'm hoping that we're going to get to meet some of you in person. My nephew Zachary's going to be with me. My dad's going to be with me. Sean's going to be there in spirit, right? Okay. Vince is going to be there once he's done playing his round of 18. Vince is going to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. And hopefully the 2021 season starts off with a W for Notre Dame. But the 2021 season has certainly been a W for Irish Breakdown. I appreciate all y'all so very much. I think is that John A1 that just hit us up with a super chat here real quick down here. Mark Stewart, my man Mark Stewart. Congrats on everything. Welcome, Sean. Keep crushing it. And I know he's going to do that. There's no doubt about that. And Mark's been one of those people that's been with us from day one. So, Mark, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We love all y'all. Can't wait to we're going to be here tomorrow, January 1. We're going to be right back at it, baby, post-game show. So that's why you got to hit the like button, hit subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know exactly when we're going to go and do our show tomorrow. But to everybody else, have a happy New Year. We will talk to you all again tomorrow.